How much does garment industry actually waste? There are no reliable figures for this, but we know it is a very large number. Waste is generated at nearly every step of a garment life cycle. One of the waste hotspots is the garment production factory. Now, unless the product is designed for zero waste production, you can't avoid cutting scraps and defects. It is estimated that at least 10% of fabric intended for clothing ends up on the cutting room floor. But besides fabrics, there are other kind of material waste also that are generated in a factory floor. To understand this issue better, today we have Prashant Mithare, who has long years of experience managing garment factories. Welcome, Prashant. But before we delve deeper, could you please tell us how long you have been in the industry and what do you do?
Thanks, Sandeep. Okay, I'm in the industry, like garment industry as such, more than 15 years. But before garments, I was with textile industry. So altogether, it's like close to like more than 26 years experience. And I have been handling the n number of factories at a time in the industry. Like I used to handle like 5 to 7 factories anytime. My background comes from the operation management basically. I have done my post graduation in manufacturing management. So after and with the textile engineering background, it's a technical and the managerial part of this, and have been handling working into different operations, quality, and like last 5 6 years, I'm handling the business. Uh, just all most of the experience in Bangladesh and couple of experience in Mauritius.
So if you just kind of give a indication of, let's say, the quantity we talk about, right? So typically in your factories right now that you manage, how many garments are produced per year, pieces of garments?
Currently, like we are producing almost close to like 50,000 pieces per day.
Per day.
So yeah, per day 50,000 pieces. So that means like it's close to like
It's a large
well
number.
15 to yeah,
It's a big
yeah.
number.
Big
So
number.
now when we, so just to understand the topic as we were discussing, right? So in this garment production, how big is the problem of waste in the garment factory floor?
Okay, let's look at this. The basic component is fabric. Even in terms of the cost, almost 70+% of the entire garment manufacturing cost goes into fabric, and highest number of waste is also generated in the fabric. There are like we have to look into different this thing. There is a waste which you can avoid, and there is a waste which is inherent in the process. Like it looks very nice to talk like zero waste, but in some cases it's really not possible. Like the way the garment we make, we have to first cut the patterns, and within the patterns definitely there will be some wastage, because when we say a square of a fabric, we cut the pattern according to shape. The waste will definitely is going to happen, but how much we can reduce, that is what the saving will come from. Generally in the cutting, the whatever like thumb rule people says, if your marker efficiency is 85%. What does marker efficiency means? If I cut like say 100 square yard of the fabric, if I take, and I'm consuming 85 square yard into garment, 15 square yard is going as a waste. That's considered as good, but this is just a thumb rule. Whatever is less, if the marker efficiency is 90, it's much better. Sometimes what happens, like we just make the pattern and all, and marker efficiency maybe less than even 80. It might be 75, it might be 76, and still it's okay. The garment is costed accordingly, it's been sold accordingly, it's been priced accordingly. That's a different aspect. But if we concentrate, the balance 25% is actually is wastage. So we pay for that fabric, and we don't manufacture, like it is not converted into the apparel, or it is not converted into the garment, and that wastage is charged to the customer. It's like it's coming to that. So that's the biggest waste which we get.
So it is already priced in a certain amount of waste, right? Now you said that 15% would be considered good. If you have a marker efficiency at 85%, that will be considered good. Now, where would you say the maximum, let's say, responsibility of getting this efficiency lies? Is it at the fashion designer stage, or is it at the factory floor stage?
Okay, well, it's not at the fashion designer stage. I'll put it this way: the fashion designer will design based on the what is required as per the trend. Nobody has a choice on that. Based on that, we get into the different sizes, and at the factory level, we make the marker. When we are making the marker, the base consideration is the width of the fabric. Now, when we are sourcing the fabric, when we define the width, everybody it's like everybody wants to say what is the base utilization. When we go to the textile mill, they say, okay, this is the width we can give. We cannot go below this, or we cannot go beyond that. So that is where the first thing comes. A little bit adjustment into the width of the fabric, what we are taking, can make a big difference into the consumption. The consumption means the marker efficiency. So that comes into the first sampling stage. At the factory level, if we can define that, okay, generally we take the standard width and we say, okay, this is the consumption which is coming, and based on the consumption, the costing is done. And if the cost is acceptable to both the end, okay, let's go ahead. But it's not generally, the part is missing is that we don't try that, okay, why don't we try 2-3 different widths and see where we can have the best consumption or best marker efficiency. That comes the first part. The second part comes is the ratio, because when we get the order, when we cut the order, we have to cut into certain ratios, and like a small, medium, like one piece of small, two piece of medium, two piece of L, one piece of XL, like that. So the best the best combination of those ratio while cutting, that also plays a bigger role. So generally it's like, okay, based on the pattern masters and all, they know that generally what we do, we take the small garment and the small size, and we take the large size and we club together. The large means XL, the S and XL we club together, M and L we club together. But many times it happens that, like, okay, we don't get into the cut order plan, we don't do that planning properly, then definitely our overall consumption goes up. We don't come into this. Now this is on the planning side, that's marker efficiency. Secondly, what happens when we are laying the fabric, there is a wastage happening on both the end of the fabric, because when we lay the fabric and we put the marker on that, the both side of the fabric we have to leave like at least half inch, because otherwise it's cutting, and then size measurement and everything goes. So there is a limitation on how much fabric, how much yard or how much meter you can lay on the cutting table. The factories which are doing the manual marking, the wastage will be more, because you cannot go for a higher length of the laying. But if you have the auto spreader and you have the auto cutter, we can go for the higher length. Let's say, like, generally we say 8 yards. 8 yards is a good length for the manual. But if we have the auto marker, or auto spreader and auto cutter, we can go even up to 20 yards, 30 yards also. So there what happens, the number of layers goes down, and because the number of layers goes down per roll, the wastage at the end of the roll or end of the lay, that reduces. So that's another part which we get into the consumption part. So these two, like, cutting is the main, where we have the maximum material waste in terms of value, in terms of volume also. So that's the second thing which comes. Third thing which comes is the fabric defect. So if we have, there is a standard 4-point system, we have to accept the fabric quality, and we say that, okay, based on that it's accepted. But sometimes what happens, the fabric defects are more, then you have to replace those panels after cutting, which, let's say, in a simple let's say t-shirt, which is a simple thing, we say one is front panel, one is back panel, and there are 2 sleeves. So if there is any one panel has a defect, definitely nobody is going to buy a defective garment. So we have to throw this panel, and then for that panel we have to do the recutting, matching with the shades and everything. So that is where we get those panels are the waste, so we get additional wastage there. The third thing, which comes, the fabric length is not constant, because wherever there is a defect in the fabric is cut there, so length of the roll varies. And if we have the layer which we do, let's say 8 yards, and the roll is over, and it is left with 3 yards or 4 yards, we can't do anything out of it. It might be kept to replace some panels, but otherwise that's just to throw, or we can use to, like, covering some machines or those kind of things. So these are the practical additional waste which gets added. So in this case, in cutting, like, we cannot say, like, okay, eliminate those waste, but definitely if we have the proper planning into the sample making, that, okay, consider the width of the fabric which can give the best marker efficiency, try to get the marker efficiency, like, which is close to 100. Definitely 100 is not possible, close to 100. I have seen the best is like 89. 89, 89, 90 I have seen the best, but again depends on the product, depend on the style. Try to get into the automation in the cutting, get away from the manual operations. So that reduces, because more you handle manual operations, more will be the waste. Third, ensure the fabric quality is good. If we have these three things, the lot of waste can be controlled.
Now, it is definitely a significant part, and from what I hear from you, there are a lot of things that production manager can in fact do, right?
Yeah.
From the capex as well as from the opex plannings, the operational plannings, to reduce this waste. Now, what is the percentage of the fabric cost that goes into the overall cost of a factory, to get an understanding and basic estimate of what kind of savings are possible, not only for reducing the waste but also for the benefit of the factory itself?
Yeah. So see, it's like I can say the fabric as a whole, it will go almost up to like 30% of the our total garment costing goes into the fabric. And if we say like overall as a, it goes to 60-65% as a overall garment factory cost. It's a huge. And most of the things are like, I always use the word, don't abuse the fabric, because that is where everything lies. You save the fabric and you can produce more garment, we can do the excess shipment. Like it's like excess shipment is like this. Suppose we book order for 100 pieces. The costing is generally done for 102 pieces. The 2% is always considered as a waste. So if we can save the fabric and we can make, let's say one piece more, that one piece we are not earning the margin, we are earning the FOB, because all the material is already costed as a free. So that particular garment is free of cost. We produce free of cost and we are selling it at the full price. So that's where it's very important. So like the fabric overall, even if you consider 70%, 75% of the garment cost, or you consider 60% of the factory cost, whatever way, that's where like always respect the fabric, don't abuse.
So when you say that it is generally priced for 102 garments, so 2%, is that from the quality defects or that includes the wastage from the fabric? Because as you said that almost 15% is industry standard, which is already part of the costing. So this 2% that you are talking about extra, that is from the finished product, or that also includes this part? That's for finished.
No, that's considered the finished product. And even if we take it out, the generally fabric is considered 3% excess. Like for 2% garment, the fabric is considered like 3% excess, because like apart from the consumption, there is one consumption and then we expect some panel replacement. So panel replacement plus garment wastage. So all put together, it's considered 3%.
Okay. So now if we move beyond, let's say the cutting floor, right? The wastage that happens from the cutting side, right? What are the other process areas during the garment production where you have, let's say, some of the hotspots of wastage?
Okay. To me, the second hotspot I consider as a finished garment, and mostly it happens in the sewing. Why finished garment is the biggest way, like number 2 waste? Because it's a value added. We add value and we produce that garment. And after that, if this garment is like unshippable, then that contributes more. As I said, like we consider like 2% as a excess cutting. But what like if we can save that, and it's possible. I have like currently, like the factory which I am handling, my rejection percent or unshippable percent is 0.035%. Like so, we can if we have the coordinated effort, it's really controllable. And here the silly part. Why I say silly part? But that's my experience. It says like generally, suppose a newcomer is joining the factory today as a worker, the mindset of the supervisor or mindset of the production manager is that okay, the person is new, we have to put him into the line. So the best job for him, okay, give him to cut the thread. So once the garment is completed, somebody has to cut the thread. So the person is just cutting the thread, and this guy, when he enters the floor, so many people, so many machines, he's like already he doesn't know what to do. On top of it, he has been given a scissor and he is asked to cut the thread, and then a target is given because he has to cut the thread in line with the production which is coming. So generally what happens is, while cutting the thread, the person might cut the garment. And that's what like in the rejected garment, the maximum contribution, almost close to 70 to 80% of the contribution which comes is from the cut damages. And that's the second highest waste I have seen in whichever factories I have worked and whichever factories I have visited. This is very major. And generally we say, okay, the new guy, what he can do. So what I suggest here, like, okay, if he can get the person, put him into the training rather than directly putting him on the job, because that's where he's handling the value added garments, and that poor fellow doesn't know what he's doing by cutting the garment while he's cutting the thread and to match with the production output or production target. And when these garments become useless to sell, this is just throw away. So that's the second waste which comes.
So,
Damaged garments.
so that's on the skill of the operator, especially from the newcomers, right?
Yeah,
So
it's not the operator, it's the thread trimmer.
is the thread trimmer. So it's
Yeah.
one of the workers who are still new, who are getting trained on the job, and the mistakes that
Yes.
they make. That is sort of the another large area that we talk about.
Right.
Going down the process in the factory floor, are there any other hotspots?
Yes, the second hotspot is store. Though the store manager is poor, like he's not responsible. That's where I say the merchandiser and maybe the planner. They have to have the proper coordination, because as I said, we generally go and book for the standard 3%. Now when we say, or standard 2%, we say, okay, 2% excess material required for 100 pieces. Now when we say 2%, we book 2% of the extra fabric, we book 2% of the excess sewing material or trims and accessories, and then we go and book 2% of the finished product also, or finishing trims also. That's where I differ. Where I differ is that maybe, okay, we can book 2% excess sewing material. From the sewing, end of the sewing line, there is a quality check, and whenever the quality check happens, the reject garments are already rejected. So what goes into the finishing is not rejected garments; it's 100% okay garments. And if we know what is our rejection percentage or what is our unshippable percentage, there is no need to go for that exact 2% excess finishing trims and accessories. Maybe if suppose we have 1% extra like rejection in the sewing, you book 1% less in finishing. Otherwise, what is happening once the order is over, this excess raw material which is procured, that lies in the store as a dead stock, which may not be useful for the next order, because sometimes it is style specific, sometimes it is order specific. That's one. Second, what happens is like the thread consumption, the sewing thread. The thread consumption is done by the industrial engineer. So always there is a fight between the production guy and the industrial engineer. The consumption doesn't match. So the industrial engineer, he plays safe. Maybe the wastage is the sad part of the garment industry is like there is no scientific base of deciding the standards. There are scientific base of calculations, but there is no scientific base for deciding the standards. And that is why what happens is like when practically the things are not getting into control, then people try to put more allowances so that they should not have problem on the sewing floor. And that's what happens in the thread consumption. People say, okay, somebody says 10%, somebody says 18%, somebody says 25%. And that much thread is been booked extra. Once the order is over, that all lies as a dead stock. So most of the garment factories, if it is working for a long time, not the new factory, and we walk into the stores, you will always find 25 to 30% of the store space always occupied with the stock. They say stock lot, or they say stock. It might be the dead stock of the raw materials in terms of fabric, dead stock of the accessories, and that is all I will say the calculation errors.
Now you said that there are no standards, right?
Yes.
But there is some echo. I don't know if you want to just handle that.
Okay. Yeah.
So you said that there are no, let's say there are methods of calculations, but there are no standards in which one can do benchmarking.
Right.
Now, most of the industries will have some sort of a benchmarking that will be available in terms of their usage, in terms of the timing that is required, and so on. So, what exactly is the reason that the garment factories do not have proper benchmarking available?
Okay. The reason I can say, because this is like a labor-intensive industry, and second, like when we say, let's take the best example, I can say the assembly of the garment. Okay. People say when we say GSD is the best, what GSD does? GSD doesn't give the SMV. GSD only gives you the calculation method of the SMV. Me being the industrial engineer, I know SMV is the biggest myth of the garment industry. The reason, one, if I take the basic 5-pocket denim, okay, basic 5-pocket denim, you can see you can send it to 5 different factories and you will get 5 different assemblies done through the same software. It might range from 12 minutes to 22 minutes. The reason we calculate the way we calculate, then we say, okay, you apply for the machine speed will vary from factory to factory. You add to the allowances will vary from factory to factory. What is going to remain constant is only the length of the stitch and the stitch per stitch per inches. So only that is the thing which is this thing. That's why I said there is a standard method of calculation, but there is no standard available in the industry. Like I said, like, okay, what is the standard for the waste or marker efficiency? We say the thumb rule is 85%, is we consider good, but it's not the standard. If we say 85%, then why not 90%? Why not we go for 90%? We know, okay, 100% is not possible, because when we cut front and back, we have to cut this neck area. So neck area is going to be waste. But then what is the, like, if 100 is not possible, how much is the best? That's why I said there is no. So when we have the benchmark, what I believe is that the factory should benchmark with their own past performance. You cannot have, there is no apple to apple comparison with other factories.
Understood. So one issue is that we have a benchmark. Let's say we have a benchmarking problem in the industry. Now,
Yeah.
So we talked about the wastage that happens, let's say, during the production process. One of the things that COVID highlighted, and I just want to get your views on how serious such kind of a problem remains in non-COVID times also, let's say normal times, is the order cancellations in middle of the process. Now, this has created right now a huge amount of dead stock in the industry.
Right.
Is this a problem in non-COVID times also?
Yeah, it used to happen sometimes. Sometimes what happens is like, but now, okay, the magnitude was not to this extent. But sometimes what happens is like, okay, we are producing, and then see, the designers has designed something and they are trying to market it. Sometimes what happens is like the sales is not good, and then suddenly it says that, okay, sorry, there is the issue. Can you slow down? Or they might say that, okay, you stop the production. Whatever is already cut and put into the line, you finish that we will take. The balance, you keep the fabric, that becomes a liability fabric. The liability fabric means, yes, so the fabric is going to lie with the factory, and the customer is liable to take it. Maybe they will change the design, maybe they will take it into the next season. But that dead stock doesn't go as a raw material. Fortunately, this industry, the brands are committed. I have seen most of the cases, they say, okay, we have given you the order, it's our liability, whichever form it is. And then whatever is produced, they will take. Maybe they may not take today, they will take after 1 month, they will take after 2 months, maybe they will take into the next season. And whatever fabric is remaining, they might change the design, they might come up with a new product, and they will say, okay, this is a fabric, this much garments can be produced, so let's go ahead with this.
So this is not a serious issue when it comes to the non-COVID times, right? So it basically becomes an inventory issue. It becomes a bit of a financing issue, but it's not necessarily a wastage issue.
Exactly. A financial issue, inventory issue, there will be the storage space chaos.
Sure. Now, so that's on the fabric side, right? But going beyond fabrics, what are other kind of major wastes that are generated in a garment factory?
Okay. I said like fabric, I said like excess material procured, and I said like damaged garments. So this covers almost 90-95% of the waste. Apart from that, there are the waste. Okay, if you have to forcefully go to the waste, this is the waste, that is the waste, then we have a lot of waste, like used machine oil. Then there could be like a rejected accessory, like broken hanger could be there. Even the tube lights, the fused tube lights. Like generally in a factory, whatever is all other sundry waste, the wasted papers and all, those wastes are always there in any factory. Specific to garment, either it is a fabric, it is an excess raw material in terms of fabric or accessories, and the third one is damaged garment. These are the three major wastes we have in the garment factories.
So what is it that one can do? You talked about, of course, the efficiency that can come in the production floor, but
Right.
is there any other means in which let's say the garment factories can engage with the processes upstream or downstream, right? From the clients, from the brands and the retailers, or from someone else, to make a mutually beneficial arrangement whereby this waste essentially, which is a cost in the entire value chain, this can be reduced and it benefits everyone. So is there any other such initiative that comes to your mind?
Yeah, it comes like as I said, like we work with the fabric mills, and you get into the right width, or I can say the optimum width, where we will have the less wastage, the maximum marker efficiency, and then definitely as your consumption goes down, the benefit goes to the end customer, because when we say the consumption goes down, definitely the cost of the garment goes down, and that benefit is not to the brand; it goes to the person who is purchasing the garment. It goes to the end customer, because the whole value of the garment goes down. The second what we do is like on the procurement side, if we have like local accessories or we have a local supplier, you can always work with that. Let's suppose you have the order of 100,000 pieces, then you don't need to procure 100,000 pieces and import it and put into your warehouse. You can keep on getting the replenishments, and then we work out that okay, when our percentage of rejection goes down, we can reduce the fabric what we are procuring, and that always helps the factory. It always helps the brand. The third thing what we do, lot of brands they allow excess shipments. They say that okay, because they like when we say, they say okay, plus 3% excess you can ship. There are few brands they don't allow, but there are maximum brands they allow. So that's always beneficial. I got like 3% extra. I cut 3% extra. My processes I have managed well. I have got a better process excellencies or better process control. So instead of like cutting 2% and instead of wasting 2%, like I'm just wasting 1%. Like as I said, my wastage is only 0.03%. So in that case, why can't I ship 1.5% extra? And those cases brands also allow, which also helps them. Maybe we can have mutual understanding that 50-50 benefit, or sometimes they say okay, you ship 3% extra, so that we don't have the dead stock of the ready-made garments. So dead stock of the ready-made garments is as another issue, because it has a brand identity. Then you have to cut those labels, and all those procedures can be avoided. Though it's not a physical waste, but additional process to dispose of those garments, it's a cost. So those things can be avoided. So these are the three main things which always we work with the brands, and we do that. And those practices are already in the industry.
Now, apart from, let's say, these kind of materials, you also have in the process the other consumables like needles. That is
Yes,
also something which is a, let's say, significant spare part that is consumed on a daily
right.
basis. How large is, if you can just give an idea of what is the quantum of the waste on the needles that we are talking about, and typically what is done with that?
Okay. Generally, what happens, needle? Let's say a standard. If I take a standard, again there is no standard in the needle. I'll tell you my experience in the needle. Like when I started handling, getting into the needle consumption, it was way back in 2012, 2013. I, I used to have like 20 needles breakages per line per day. The line of like 40 machines, and like it was like almost. I was thinking that why so many needles breaks. Somebody challenged me. He said, "Sir, if you can reduce it, I will not work in this industry." I used to I try to contact the needle suppliers, and trust me, nobody could give me the what is the needle life except one brand. It's a German brand, Smiths, and they said that needle can break in 1 second or it can go for 1 month. It depends on the wear and tear of the needle. Now the calculation comes, it's very simple. Even if I take like 1 month, that's the extreme case, and 1 second is okay, then why should needle break in 1 second? I did a detailed analysis why needle breaks, and I could come into only two reasons: either the operator is not handling properly, or the maintenance is failed to set the machine properly. These are the only two needles. There's a compliance requirement we have, that when the needle breaks, unless you find all the broken parts, don't issue the needle. I put additional one more this thing, that okay, that's the compliance part. But unless you find why this needle breaks with the evidence, don't issue the needle. And we could get into this thing. We trained the people, and finally the needle breakage has come down to five to six needles per day per line. So what I think is that one needle, even if the one needle runs for 4 days, doesn't no need to run for this thing. Currently, I'm running one needle for 5 days, so it's come to like 0.25 or zero point 0.2 needles, like per day per machine, and that's where when I reached, my saving was 64 lakh. 64 lakh means 640,000 rupees per annum. That is how, not 6.4 million, 6.4 million rupees per annum. This is what the saving I got only from the needle consumption. Now,
And this would be this is this only the material cost, because you will also have the production time loss that will happen because of that, right?
yeah, definitely. Material cost is what is visible. Production time loss is which is not visible, because we have to search for the needle particles. Plus, there is a product safety issue, because if suppose some particles are not found and you don't know, like on the floor, anything can happen. People will just, yeah, there is a format for missing needle. People will just give missing needle, and the needle might get into the garment. We have the system to pass 100% of the garments to metal detector, it's called gain caught, but it's all loss. The time loss is there and everything is there. Production loss, efficiency loss, those are intangible losses are there. So that's one. Now coming to disposal, there are a lot of ways people do. Somebody sell it back, somebody does, like they just dig a pit and put into. We came up with this thing that we prepared the cement cake. We put all the needles into that cement cake and covered. But okay, though I have given this few days back into LinkedIn and other this thing. Now let me tell you, there is a brand called Gross Bracket. That's also German brand. Now they have come up with the biodegradable needles. Like when they say that needle breakages, you don't do anything. You just put into the soil and it will vanish on its own, like 6 months or something. I have no exact idea, but that's the best way to do it, because like when we are disposing the needles, we are not looking at the income out of it. But what we have to look at it, it's not we are not playing with the health and safety of the any person who is handling those broken needles. Secondly, we have to see that we are not harming the environment. So these are the two, because corrosion and all those stuffs can happen. So that is why I came up with this cement cake, which we can use as a drainage cover and all. But if somebody can give the needles which can vanish on its own, it's a biodegradable needle, that's the best way to do. And the cost is same. It's not costly needle. The cost of purchasing is same. The second, you can save a lot of money if you can use it properly.
So, I mean, disposal, if we just talk about the disposal, and you talked about disposal of needles, but bringing back the topic to the major area of waste, which is the concern in the factory, which is garment. So now you have all this waste that is generated. What exactly happens to this? Because this is still material that has some value in it, right? So what are the practices? Who are the vendors who typically take that? Are there someone who treats this as a resource?
Yeah, definitely, because there is a different industry working on this garment waste. So all this, see, the cutting waste is called as jute. There are the big cut panel wastes are there. Raw material, generally it is sold to the like kids wear. There are factories who produce, then all generally in the local market. The excess accessories that goes into the stock, that is also sold to the like local market who are preparing the garments. All this you can see the street markets. Most of the garments on the street markets is either made out of this wastages or excess material which is lying as a dead stock in the garment factories, or some of the cases the excess garments which is not sold or which has not like could not be shipped. It's just the labels are cut, brand identity is removed, and it is sold in the local market. That's a big industries operating. In some factories, what they do, there are like it is sold to the we call it jute. All this cutting waste is called jute. It is used for the filling, like a pillow and beds and those kind of this thing. Now, some of the factories has come up with the like there was a tremendous gas shortages, and the new factories was not getting gas connections. Working the boiler on diesel or electric is costing a lot. Gas boiler is the cheapest, so gas is the cheapest resource for boiler operation, and electric is a damn costly. Then second comes is like a diesel. Now there is an incineration boiler. People are using this cutting jute, throwing into the boiler, just burning it and generating steam, because you don't have gas connection and you cannot afford diesel or you cannot afford electric boiler. So that's also is one of the way. Like as long as it is not polluting anything, it's a pollution free, and all the environment certificates and everything is there. People do for burning it and doing the incineration for the all this kind of cutting jute. The rest is sold.
So, I mean, when you talk about all these different kind of uses from the waste, right? So, if you have something which is finished and you just need to remove the label, that will have a certain pricing.
Hmm.
If you are using it as a filler in different kind of products like pillows and all, it will have a certain kind of a pricing. If you are
Yeah,
converting into a fuel, then depending on what is the material, it may have certain variations that might come in.
right.
Right, the natural fiber versus, let's say, the synthetic fibers and so on.
Yeah.
So what how organized is this whole market for the scrap and the trimmings that come out of factory floor?
Well, organized means there is not organized. These are disorganized sectors, but it's working well. There are the traders and everything. It's all well set. Everybody knows how the people who are working in that particular industry, whichever country, they know how the things happen. They will just purchase the jute, and then there will be segregation. The one which is a very small size that goes into the incineration, or that goes into the filling. The one which is with the bigger sizes, then that is taken together. Maybe the styling is decided based on that. It goes to the small tailoring shop with who will have one machine, two machine, three machine, and it will be cut into like single piece, and they make the different garment that will go into the local market for sale. They only will get the buttons, zippers, which is excess in good condition. These guys are masters into their own area. So though it's a decentralized sector, it's well organized within their working without any particular systems and all.
So there is a, let's say, a usage which is there, which is well
Yes,
established. You have reasonable portions of those are currently being used.
yes,
You also mentioned that some part of it goes into conversion of fuels, right?
yes.
So that's very interesting exploration that we did with you, Mr. Prashant, today. But before we just finish this call, is there anything else that you would want to say to anyone who's listening to this?
Yeah, basically, like what I can say, like see, waste. If you look at the waste, there are always inherent waste in the process, and some of the process where you can really hit the zero waste. Whatever like inherent waste. When I say cutting, the cutting process will always have inherent waste. Where we have that, our focus should be always better. Like how we can reduce and to what extent. Why don't we always aim for the process excellency in every aspect? In sewing part, when we when we do the costing at 2% extra, there is a basic understanding, or there is a bottom line we consider, or there we can say there is a thing. I don't get the exact word, but we say that okay, there will be rejection. We cannot have zero defect in the garments. That's a wrong belief. That's a wrong belief. I can say that okay, if we really take control on the each and every process, and we can really monitor it, we can get the zero defect. I'll just share one experience. Like when we say the quality problem, most of the cases people are telling me like take out the top three defects, so you can work on those root cause analysis and you can improve. And take out the like where these defects are created. There is a traffic light systems and lot of things in the industry. So the thing is that okay, when we look at the top three defects and we want to improve on those defects, fair enough. But are there any people, like any operators, who are not making any defects in the thing? Let's say we are producing like 100 pieces per hour. That means every operator is making 100 operations. She's working 10 hours in a day. That means 1,000 operations. 26 days in a month, 26,000 operations in a month. So when I asked, okay, like who are the worst operators, who are the top three defects, I used to ask the question, do you have any person who has not created a single defect when she had 26,000 opportunities to create the defect? And like most of like I didn't get the answer. We started monitoring that. We used to have like 1.5% unshippable garment or defective garments. We said okay, every defect you trace it back to the operators, start monitoring and incentivize, recognize those people. They are the gems we have, and incentivize. Maybe give some cash incentive or whatever you want to do, and see what it makes. Trust me, there were like two or three persons in every line. Today we had like 10 to 15 persons in every line who are the zero defect operators, and that is the reason the damage percentage or unshippable garment percentage has dropped down to 0.03%. And I'm sure we can make it to 0%. And that is why what I say, then when we talk about the waste, first we have to reduce, and when we reduce, we have to control and look into the process excellency. The garment industry is a big labor incentive, but it is not that much systematic. There are some bits and pieces. Maybe the industrial engineer is systematic, but though it is still the persons who are actually working, they are not that highly educated. If we can guide them properly, we can aim at the zero defect. And when we aim at zero defect, all these finished product wastages that can be definitely brought down to zero.
So that's very helpful, Prashant. I think what you talk about is definitely important, and these are learnings which we see across the industries. It's important to understand, as you highlighted, that there is some part of the waste which is inherent to the process, which cannot be
Yeah.
eliminated, but there is still a lot of opportunity that exists to reduce the amount of waste that is generated. This is a large number, even though there is a end use of whatever trimmings that come out of factory floor, but this is
Yes.
still a cost. That is the cost on the entire value chain, and this has a lot of benefits if it is done the right way at the factory floor. Thank you once again for sharing all these views with us.
Thanks, Sandeep. Thanks.